think I might have to change it to 4. It's not coming on right away. Hello, Sup Connect community. Thrilled to be here again. Got a good one today. They're always great, but I was just thinking I should be so nervous. I am interviewing a 3-time Olympian, gold and silver medalist, an amazing guy, but our stand-up paddle community is so wonderful and friendly, and I have met him before and know what a great guy he is. So these conversations are just so fun and easy. I always learn something new. I love sharing them. So today we have Larry Cain from Canada. I always try to dig for t-shirts that sort of mean something to who I'm interviewing. This is the only one I could find with a Canadian flag, not his brand, mine, but that's okay. I'm sure he won't mind. But so much good stuff to talk about, and he has really been a huge resource and inspiration in stand-up paddleboarding, but has a much deeper career than that. The Olympic canoeist, then stand-up paddle coach and elite athlete and racer from, I don't know what parts of Canada, so we'll have to talk about that. I believe he's in Ontario area now. And I asked if you knew how many years he's been paddling. Dating him a little bit, but we're both around the same age. I think I'm older. Larry Cain today we have from Canada with us, and hopefully he has found us. It's funny, these Instagram, there we are with some other Canadians too. Thank you. We've got Jordana and Maddie and a bunch of others joining us today. Hey, everybody from Canada and from everywhere in the world, because I know we get quite a great following. So fun to have everybody here. This is going to be a great one. Larry should be joining us any moment. Oh, we got the Canadian flag going. Go, Maddie. Where else are people from? And Jordana's got the flag up. Thank you both for being here. Hey, Bernie. Always fun to have all these. Kirsty on the other side of Canada. We do have Samantha, who we will be talking to next week from all the way in England. Hi, Susie. Susie's from my area. I'm going to see her in a week at our big winter race, Hano Hano, in San Diego, California. So hopefully he's not mad at me that I'm wearing a tank top. Again, it was because it had a Canadian flag on it. Want to, but while we're waiting for Larry to upgrade his Instagram. Sorry, Larry, hadn't run into that one yet. Okay, I don't think Steve wants to talk. Steve, you want to join me and chat for a minute? Have you had Coach Larry before or watched some of his great videos on stroke technique? I want to hear his whole Olympic background because I don't know all the story. I've seen some amazing pictures. That high kneel canoe just looks insanely difficult. If any of you from Canada have had him for a coach. Oh, Northern Ireland. Oh, that's where Sup Hub NI. I was wondering where you were from. Northern Ireland. Fantastic. Joseph, thanks for always being there. Appreciate you. Or one of our regulars on Thursdays. I can see and hear you What am I doing wrong? Oh, you're not doing anything wrong, but it's telling me your Instagram is not upgraded. So, so Steve doesn't want to join. I just don't want to give away too much. So I can go off, or we can sit here and babble. Tell me where you're from. Ask questions, because nobody's a better resource about stand-up paddle technique and just in general. Somebody help me. Does somebody have Larry's phone number? I don't, and text him. I would close it. You can come back to this, but just close Instagram. I don't know where, can anybody text where the upgrade would be? Shoot. Well, worst case, Larry's, oh, sup girl Kirsty. Larry's my coach, paddle with him most mornings. Awesome. So you live by him. That's great. We've got some shakas, we got some waves. Thanks for joining us, everyone. We're having a little bit of technical difficulties. It's telling me, I'm gonna try again, because I see that Larry's here, Larry's listening. He's asking someone for help. Maybe, Kirsty, if you live nearby, maybe you can go over to his house and help him upgrade. Austin Surf Betty, how are you? Linda. Lucky you, close enough to run around. No, I didn't say she has his phone number, but I bet she does since they paddle together, don't you think? Not sure about that. Don't want to give that away. Question from stories. Uruguay, best place ever. Oh, these are people telling us where they're from. Hey, Craig, how you doing? We're having a little technical difficulty getting Larry on here, but thanks to everyone who's here. Tell us where you're from. I'm going to scroll back through and see. I wish I knew. Do we have any techies on here? It's telling me that he has too old a version of Instagram to join me. How does Larry update his Instagram? Yes, Larry is on, Kirsty. He just, he can see and hear me, but he can't join for some reason. Going to try inviting him again, but I think he might have closed down and is trying to upgrade. Kirsty, do you want to talk for a minute? Oop, there he is. Sorry, Kirsty. I think we might have Larry. Please work. Yay! You're there. Can you hear me? Okay, now maybe volume on your phone. We're getting close. I'll try my volume.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Can hear you, can see you.
Excellent.
You can hear me.
Yep. Yeah.
We're good.
All good.
Sorry about that.
That's no, my fault.
No,
I just
not-
it's the first time I've done this, so it's always an adventure the first time.
Yes. That's a good way to look at it.
Yeah.
It's an adventure, this technology stuff.
Yeah.
I had no idea what I was doing when I started.
Yeah.
And they keep changing, which really actually drives me crazy, but it's just part of the fast moving tech world. Larry, I'm thrilled to have you. I was just saying, I mean, I'm so honored, but I should be nervous, but I'm not, because I already know what a great guy you are, how generous and big-hearted you are, how much knowledge you have. So excited to jump right in, but got to start with the how many years have you been paddling? Did anybody guess? Let's see. Again, we're dating ourselves because I'm around your age.
Right.
To have paddled that many years. 47 years. So most people in stand-up, you know, if you've paddled for 10, it's a long time, that don't have the background that you do. So where did you first find the water? Was it a family thing?
You know what? The community I grew up in has a canoe club, and it was just starting in 1974 when my friends and I were 11 years old. And when we were kids, there was a family of 3 boys across the street and 2 boys in the next street. And our mothers were friends, and they would sign us up for different activities together. And so in previous summers, we'd done soccer and baseball, and we all decided that we wanted to do something different, and the canoe club had just started. So they signed us up to the canoe club, and it was a lot of fun. Like, we'd ride our bikes down in the morning, be there from 9 till noon. We'd come home, have lunch. We'd go back again from 1 till 4. And then we'd actually go back in the evening and paddle what they call war canoe, which is 14 paddlers and a captain. And so we were down there all day, and got to try the racing canoes, and more than that, just got to play in a really fun environment. You know, we're down at the river, so there's lots of mischief we could get into, and but we were lucky. We had really good coaches, like really good role models who made it fun, but who also taught us the basic skills. And then we had an opportunity to race in war canoe. We won our first race that we'd ever entered, which was really fun. And then around that same time, we had a guy from this area that was preparing to race at the Olympics in '76 in Montreal. His name was John Wood, and he ended up winning a silver medal there in Montreal. And it was the first time a Canadian had won a medal at the Olympics in canoeing since the 50s. And I remember watching with my parents on television and turning to them when he crossed the finish line and saying, "That's what I want to do."
Wow.
And so, you know, I'd already met him. My first coach was his first coach. So I had, you know, good people to steer me in the right direction. And I had a lot of, you know, just, it really captured my imagination, what I saw. And I had everything in front of me, every opportunity to progress and develop. And it was just, you know, my enthusiasm for it that kept me going. And one thing kind of led to another. And, you know, I got into it pretty deep. And it's the best thing that ever happened to me, really.
I would love to say, I mean, that's an amazing story, the inspiration. And like you said, there's some great timing there. But starting at age 11 and having fun from the beginning, being on the water and enjoying all of that. I hope we can start to see more of that. I know there are some camps and such like that for stand-up or just for multi-craft, again, including stand-up, so that some may see that, choose, and get excited about stand-up the same way you did about canoe. And I know you've done lots of different craft, in fact, probably all the watercraft, but it's high Neil canoe that you have your Olympic medals in. So 3 different Olympics, gold and silver medals. Kind of talk through the 3 Olympics, the places you went.
Yeah, I mean, the best part about being an athlete on the Canadian team was the opportunity to travel and compete all around the world. And it was an interesting time too, right? It was I first went to Europe in '79 and then went virtually every year until I retired in '96. And so, you know, you think about what the world was like at that time. You know, I got to go through all the communist countries while they were still communist countries. And then I remember coming in to the house one day from school in 1989 and seeing people standing on top of the Berlin Wall, and, you know, it had just come down.
Wow.
So I kind of got to witness that and talk to people who lived behind it and then experienced it coming down. That was really cool. You know, I raced in Moscow every year from like '82. We skipped the Chernobyl year for obvious reasons. And then, you know, right up into the '90s. And it was really cool to see changes going on there. And so that was one thing, just to travel, just to see the history, to be part of that, to meet people from these other countries was amazing. But then to actually participate at the highest level was really cool too. And I'm a pretty competitive person by nature, and to be able to go and race against athletes from countries that put kind of obscure sports like canoeing on a much higher level than we do in Canada, where it's all about professional sports and, you know, primarily hockey. It was a real, really cool thing to be able to go into their countries and race competitively against them and often beat them. And that led to, you know, to 3 Olympics, and LA was the first one. And I had the best race that I'd ever had at the precise moment in time that I needed to have it when I won. And then I went back in 4 years to Seoul with the dream of getting on the podium again. And I missed it. I came 4th, which was obviously as close as you can get to the podium, but without getting there. And my friends on the team took me out that night into downtown Seoul, and we drank a bunch of beer. And they took the lid of a beer can, you know, the part that you drink through with the hole in it, and they somehow or other broke the can and took all the sharp aluminum off, so there was just the disc, and they put a string through it. and they stood me up in a chair in a bar and gave me this aluminum medal for coming fourth,
Oh,
which I
that's
still
cool.
have. And then in '88, or sorry, that was in '88, and then '92 they were in Barcelona, which was probably the most beautiful of the three Olympic cities. It was a real. I'd never been to Spain until the pre-Olympic in '91, and then in '92 it was right in the Mediterranean. The course was beautiful, the weather was beautiful, everything was fantastic, and but the racing wasn't as good. I raced doubles that year, and I've always described it as my partner and me were fighting. We weren't, we're on the same page, mentally, and we're super good friends, and that didn't shake the friendship, but we weren't working together in the boat, like our paddles weren't working exactly together in the water for some reason. And, we've been really good in some of the pre-Olympic World Cups. And the next year we were fourth and fifth at the World Championships. So we're really solid. But that year we ended up coming seventh, and it was pretty disappointing. So that's the downside. Barcelona has a lot of good memories, but that was kind of the downside of it. I was really disappointed with the result. But one thing I've realized is that, like, I tried to go back to the Olympics in Atlanta in '96, and I thought I had a really good chance to do that. I was racing singles again, and on the day of our selections, I actually came second to a guy from my club who started paddling in '84 when he'd seen me win my medal,
Oh, wow.
who had never beaten me before, but at the Olympic selection trials, that's where he beat me for the first time. So he got to go, and I got a handshake, well done, and that was pretty much it for me. So what I would say about it is that, when you win, it's amazing, and when you come fourth, you desperately wish that you could have stood on the podium, but then you go and you come seventh, and you realize how much better fourth is than seventh. And then when you come seventh, you're crushed. But then you realize how much better it is to be there coming seventh than to not make the team, right? So, sport is it's an amazing thing, and people think that if you win once, you should always be able to win. I can remember going and watching the Battle of the Paddle, and there's so many good guys. Even back, there's more good guys now, but even back in those times, there was Connor and Kai and Danny and all these other guys, and like if Danny won one year, then there's huge pressure on Danny to win the next year. And, Connor, Kai, for example, were just as capable of winning. Like, it's never a foregone conclusion what's going to happen. And especially in a sport like stand-up paddling, where so much is dependent on the conditions and the wave that you might catch or whatever. And I just think that, it's a real good lesson for all of us to watch people go and give their best and maybe not win. Like, it's like the year that Annabelle Anderson forgot how many laps she'd done and was turning to go and do another lap when it was time to finish. And things happen, and in no way does any of that diminish her stature as an athlete or what she has accomplished, but things happen. And so I look back at it, 3 Olympics, and I don't regret anything, and I'm proud of what I did. And yeah, there's races I wish, went better. And I often had races, unfortunately, when it didn't matter quite as much, where I exceeded expectations. So, it's all part of the experience. And I also think you don't truly appreciate winning unless you've lost. So, that's kind of the way I look at it.
Wow. Sage advice, and so interesting and thoughtful about finding the best, even in, you were at the top of your sport. So of course you're very competitive and you need to think the best and want the best result, but appreciating all of it in the time and in hindsight, it sounds like even more so. But we're lucky in stand-up paddling that somehow all of that led you to our sport. You started the same year I did, 2000. Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I just saying I'm lucky as well. Like, it's, I think we're all lucky to have found this sport.
Agreed. So where did you first see it or try it or start? How'd you get into stand-up?
So, funny story. I stood for a board in the first time in 2010. But at least a couple of years before that, I remember getting a phone call from my good buddy, Jimmy Terrell, who said, hey, I've started this great thing. It's like stand-up paddling. It's like it's like paddling, but it's also like, it's kind of like on a surfboard. And I actually kind of blew him off. I said, oh, come on, like I can't surf. I live on the Great Lakes. We don't have any surf. I've never tried it before. You know, I mean, it sounds great, but you live in California, easy for you to do. And it had not come anywhere close to where I live at that point. And so I just kind of, seriously, I just kind of said, you know, you're crazy. Like, you know, you have fun with it, but it's like, it's not for me. And then I was at an outrigger race a few years later in 2010. And I remember getting out of the car and, you know, getting my boat off the roof and setting it up. And this guy who was selling boards, who I'd known for years, he used to paddle kayak, came up to me and he's like, Larry, you got to try this board. And I go, I don't want to try the board. Like I'm getting ready for a race. No, you got to try it. You got to try it. I was like, Mike, I don't want to try it. Like I'm good. Like, no, you got to try it. He's just go in the lagoon, just paddle a little circle and come back. You got to try it. So finally, just to like get him off my back, I grabbed a paddle. He put the board in the water for me. I jumped on. I paddled only on the right because that's what I did in canoe. Went out and did a little circle in the flattest water possible. Came back in. I said, yeah, okay, Mike, that's pretty cool. And he goes, take the board. And I'm like, I don't want the board. He goes, no, take it. He goes, I'll put it in the car for you. I go, Mike, I don't want the board. Like I'm finished with paddling toys. Like I was actually thinking like I'm growing up, you know, I'm finally getting out of paddling. Like I just like, all right, at least I'm not like fixated on it. It's not taking over my life. And he's like, no, come on. You don't have to pay me or anything. Just take the board. Try it. You see if you like it. So finally I was like, okay, put it in the car. So I put it in the car, tied it down. I went, did my outrigger race, came back in. I went home with an outrigger and a paddleboard. And I took it off the car and I put it in the canoe club. I was coaching at the canoe club at the time. And I didn't touch it for like, I don't know, 3 or 4 weeks. Just sat there gathering dust. And then our national championships were in Regina, which is out in the prairies in the middle of Canada that year. And so we sent all the boats that the club was going to use in a couple of transport trucks out to Regina, and they had to leave a week early. And so all the kids I was coaching didn't have boats to paddle in. So I lent my C1, my racing canoe, to one of the kids. And then somebody else took my outrigger. And I thought, I'm going to try that stand-up board thing. So I put it in the water, and you know, in canoeing, like once GPSs were discovered, and for the best part of my career, they weren't. They were, you know, like who would have dreamed of a GPS, right? That could tell you how fast you're going or how far you're going, right? But you know, now they're so common, right? But by that time I had a GPS and I used it in my outrigger all the time. And I started using it when I was coaching the kids. I could tell them I'd paddle beside them, tell them how fast they're going, that type of thing. And so I taped it onto my board just so I could see, you know, like, hey, why not see how slow I'm going on this board? And I went out and I paddled with the kids, and you know, it was pretty good. I paddled only on the right because that's what I could do, and on the left it felt really unsteady. And but I made note of the paces that I was doing, and then I came in, and it was fun, but it wasn't like, it didn't rock my world. But I came in and I remembered the paces, and then I don't know, a couple of days later I was bored and I was cruising on the internet, and I looked up some race results, and I remember seeing this race. It was in North Carolina in Wrightsville Beach. It was in January. It's called it was called the Cold Stroke Classic. EJ and Byron Kurt and a few other guys had gone there, and they'd done it. And I think it was 6 miles, and I can't remember what their time was, but I calculated out the pace, and I realized like I can do that pace. So then all of a sudden, then I'm like, okay, like well, I can do that pace, and these guys are good. Like I could do that pace. So then I was in 2010 in like August. And so that fall I went out and tried to paddle in the lake, and in the smallest waves I was, you know, I couldn't do it. And I remember I was on the board I was on at the time was like a Bark Competitor, right? Remember the 12'6", 29-inch wide board. And I remember I wanted to give it back to the guy who gave it to me and get like a rec type board, because I could hammer on that on both sides and feel stable. And he goes, no, I'm not giving you that. He goes, you'll get used to this other board. Like, yeah, but it's too tippy. No, you'll get used to it. So that's basically the board I took in January 2011, so 10 years ago, this month. I think it was 10 years ago last weekend, back to Wrightsville Beach, and we went in this a few guys from up here and myself won in the Cold Stroke Classic. And I won the 12-6, and I finished just behind this guy, Chris Hill, a local, on a 14-foot board. And like, seriously, we paddled together the whole way. I paddled only on the right for 6 miles. And
Wow.
but like, I was hooked. And so I realized that first thing I did was get a 14-foot board. I did that. Jimmy hooked me up with Joe Bark, who was the greatest guy, so generous, gave me so much support, and I raced on Bark boards until 2015, and it actually broke my heart to not race on a Bark board anymore. But I realized that the boards that the guys that I was racing against, like I was in the draft train in Carolina Cup that year in 2015, and I was like, why can't I keep up with the guys? Like, last year it was easier. The year before it was easier. What's going on? What, like, have I hit the wall? What's going on? And I was in the draft train. I remember looking down at the back of the board in front of me, and it had a big 24 on it. And what I said, and I looked again, it was like 14 by 24. I'm like, he's on a 24-inch wide board. I'm on a 28-inch wide board. What the hell, right? Like, and then I started looking when I got to the beach at all the other boards, and I realized that, you know, the sport had progressed. People were going narrower and narrower, and I realized I got to do something to get, you know, to get with the times, to get, if I was going to be competitive. And so I was working with the national canoe team, and I had to go to Europe right after Carolina Cup to coach. I was there for a month, and I did all kinds of research and homework, and I lined up a bunch of different 14-foot boards to test when I got home. And I used a little gizmo that we were putting on the canoes and kayaks when they were racing. It told us pace, stroke rate, acceleration, you know, all kinds of information. And I put that on each board that I tested, and I came up with some test protocol that I thought was pretty good, where I could eliminate a lot of the variables that would occur, you know, when you're going from board to board. And I tested over a course of like 2 weeks. And the board that worked best for me, and I'm not saying that was the best board at the time by any stretch. I do believe that certain boards are suited for certain people based on their technique and their, you know, the gear they like to paddle in, whatever. It was a starboard. And so I went and bought a starboard. I actually bought an All-Star in a spring. And then it was like at the end of the summer where they contacted me and said, hey, do you want to ride for us? And then that was great. And so so I've been a starboard rider since then, and you know, super happy with that. So yeah, I mean, that's how I got into it, and it was just, you know, I hadn't intended to get that into canoeing or paddling again, because I'd kind of done that. And I was kind of proud of myself that I thought I was kind of growing out of it. You know, I was always going to love it, but I wasn't going to be like in over my head, you know, anymore. And that notion went right out the window, because I got into stand-up paddling, and when I started to meet people at the races, you know, there were some people I knew, like Jimmy, right? But there was a whole bunch of people I'd never met before, and they were all great. You know, the coolest thing about paddling is I can count on one hand, and I don't need all 5 fingers, the number of people I've met in 47 years of paddling that I don't like. Right. And that's pretty amazing. Yeah. You know, it really is, doesn't really matter what type of paddling it is. They're great people. And so I got to meet a whole new community of fantastic people and be part of that. So, you know, it was pretty easy to get hooked again.
Yeah. Tommy is saying you're never going to stop paddling, and Kirsty is agreeing.
Yeah, I think you're right.
You have
right?
so much passion, but how fun that you found a new way to, you know, challenge yourself again.
Yeah.
New equipment, new technique.
But and the great thing is new water, right? Like, you guys, it's the same water that I go in an outrigger, but outrigger is pretty easy in comparison, because you're sitting, you got the AMA. Stand-up paddling is like it. I used to tell people that canoeing was a complex sport to learn how to paddle well, because technically it's a pretty complex motion, and the balance is pretty extreme, and then you got to worry about all the fitness that you do for like any other type of Olympic event, swimming or running or whatever. But stand-up paddling is on a whole other level because of the varying conditions that you got to do it in. You know, you got to learn to down, you got to learn to paddle in side chop, you got to learn to paddle in a headwind, you got to learn to go out through the surf, you got to learn to surf, you got, you know, there's so much, right? And you're never going to get, you know, perfect in anything, right? You just have to keep going and learning. And the great thing is you can continue to learn, you know, like what other things can you be my age and keep and be improving in because you're learning all the time, right? It's just an amazing
Absolutely. Thing. Yeah, so we've got the great people. We've got that we're such a young sport that we're always learning and adapting our technique and equipment and everything. And you're right at the forefront of that. So let's talk about something else that you've founded and started. And then we'll get back to you in racing because you've done very well in stand-up paddle racing. Obviously you can't win an Olympic gold yet, but you've done a lot.
Yeah, not for me, but yeah.
to come still.
Yeah.
But Paddle Monster is, I think you're the first platform for coaching online, which is brilliant when I felt like I knew people all over the world, but you don't get to always see each other and be together. We looked for those occasions like Carolina Cup, but when did you found that? And tell us a little bit about that. I think a lot of people on here know about it, but good to get the backstory.
Well, you know, I can remember going to Carolina, you know, around 2013, 2014. And right the first year I went to Carolina for that Cold Stroke Classic, I met John Beausaint. Great guy, super, you know, he was Mr. Distress Mullet and super good guy, super into paddling. And so we became friends. And every time I go to, there we go, Distress Mullet. Every time I'd go to Wrightsville Beach, you know, we'd hang out a bit. And, you know, one of my favorite things about the Carolina Cup is breakfast in the restaurant of the Blockade Runner, right? And seeing everybody. And so I think I was there for not the Carolina Cup, but the Surf to Sound, which is a race to have in November. And it was 2015. And I'd been working for a year and a half with the National Canoe Kayak Team in Canada. And it was a 2-year contract that was supposed to go until Rio. But I had found out in September 2015 that they were going to run out of funding in April 2016. So it wasn't even going to get me all the way to Rio. Even if it did, I was going to need a follow-up gig after that. And I'd quit my job as a teacher to take this coaching job because it was kind of a dream job for a guy who's a paddler. And I'd asked for a leave of absence from my teaching job, but wasn't granted it. So I didn't have that to go back to. I'd have to look for a new teaching job. And I wasn't that keen on it anyway after having discovered the kind of the freedom of being a canoe coach, right? And being able to do every day what I love and you know, wear flip-flops and you know, board shorts and whatever to work every day. And so I was wondering what I was going to do. And I saw John in the restaurant of the Blockade Runner that morning in November 2015. And he pulls out his iPad and he shows me this thing. And he'd been talking to me about online coaching before because I'd started a website and I was putting out a lot of content because I knew maybe this was something I could do. I didn't know how to do it. I didn't know how to organize it, how to monetize it, but I was just putting out content because I wanted people to recognize that I knew things. And so he shows me this thing and he showed me the Paddle Monster logo. And he got this idea, the Paddle Monster, it could be online coaching. And you know, anytime he mentioned it to me before, I wasn't ready to do it because I had too much stuff on the go. And now it was like, I have nothing to go. Like I'm in. And so we got together in January or maybe December. I think maybe December 2015 up on Oakville, which is basically just west of Toronto where I live. And we hashed it all out. We basically designed like this online subscription-based coaching platform that has pretty much been the way it, you know, today is pretty much the way we laid it out. And I also took him out for a winter paddle when it was like minus 20 Celsius. Yeah, so it's just basically, you know, this online subscription-based coaching platform. Initially, it was a lot of, you know, providing people with training programs and a lot of knowledge. But, you know, we more recently, I've started to do technique, 8-week technique courses. Like I've always done video analysis for people, but um, like to work with somebody for 8 weeks where they're sending you video every week, and then you're having an in-depth, Zoom session that lasts maybe 90 minutes with them every week. Going over, technique with them, giving them land drills to do. I believe that if you can put your body in the right positions on land, it's a lot easier for you to find those positions on the water. I basically taught myself how to paddle canoe that way by looking at pictures of the Olympians in 1976 and, in magazines, not on the internet then, but magazines and newspapers, arraying all the photos on the ground in front of my parents' full-length mirror, and then getting in front of the full-length mirror with a broom that was about the same size as my paddle, getting in the position and emulating the positions that these athletes were in, so that I could find, be in the same position. And then it was so much easier to find them in my canoe. So I've been working with people, over 8 weeks, looking at video, giving them land drills, giving them work to do that helps them, focus on technique rather than just go and grind out a hard workout, because everyone wants to work hard. But sometimes you got to take a step backwards in the work that you do in order to end up going 2 steps forward with your technique, right?
Yeah.
So, I try to coach them through that process, and it's been amazing to see the progress that people make in 8 weeks. So, that added a new element to it, because online coaching is difficult compared to in-person coaching, obviously, because, the coaching I had when I was an athlete as a canoe, or the coaching I did at the canoe club or in the national team, was sitting in a motorboat beside the athletes I'm coaching. My coach was in a kayak beside me or in a motorboat beside me. And so, you can see how that is doable, but online has its limitations. But with things like Zoom, which didn't exist when we started Paddle Monster, really you can do a whole lot of cool things. And so, we're always trying to find ways to expand and to grow. And, it's paid my bills for the last 4 years, and hopefully we'll continue to do so. And it allows me to do what I love, which is paddling, to help people, which is the other thing that I like. I was a teacher for 20 years, which is teaching's coaching and coaching is teaching. And so now I get to teach, what I know best, which is paddling. And then it's just, I keep opening doors to new friendships and relationships, which is great too. So it's really been rewarding.
Fantastic. And thank you. And I'm sure many of the people on this call, actually a lot, have already piped in and said how great it is having you as a coach. But really cool about the new 8 week, more on technique than just training. And just training. Your training's very in depth, and all that you do, but you've really have expanded in a lot of different ways. I can't believe you're actually talking to me today, because in a couple hours you have actually a workshop online. I don't know if it's too late, but we should definitely talk about that. I'll be honest with you. I thought I was real proud of myself. I had my day organized because I thought it was 1 p.m. and I just assumed, because everything that I ever said is 1 p.m. is like Eastern time. Sorry. And so it was a little bit of a shock when I saw the Instagram post that you put up. It was like 1 p.m. Pacific, and I was like, uh-oh. So I knew my schedule's a little tight. I got to go to the chiropractor on the way from. I'm at my mom's right now, actually. I got to go to the chiropractor on my way home to then do the Paddle Monster seminar. But it's all good, Like it'll be a hectic few hours, but it'll be well worth it. It'll be good fun. Yeah, and I know you and John have really expanded. Like I saw, there's a camp coming up in Florida with Victoria and Rory, and to bring people into the surf, which I think is a really excellent idea.
Yeah, how we got with that too is we've done some really good, camps, like myself, Victoria and Seychelles did, some really good camps in flat water. Mm-hmm. But I'm kind of grounded. It's only recently that we've even been allowed to cross the border with COVID. Right. And I mentioned I met my mother. She's 91, and I'm not really going to go anywhere, both with the risk of COVID, but also and bringing it back to her, but also just I kind of want to be around. My sister lives in the UK and she's not here, so I don't want to stray too far with her still living in the house that I grew up in. And so I told the guys that, until my sister moves back, I'm not going to be, doing training camps out of country. I'm going to try to run a couple in up here locally that, and invite people from, wherever to come up. It's a really nice town that we paddle in, great paddling water. So I'd love to host people both for the camp and also, just to show them around. But Victoria wanted to do a camp, and she's a real accomplished ocean paddler, having done, all the crossings that she's done. And then Rory's a great surfer, and Victoria's a great surfer. And that's something that's been missing, is for, I know they, like there's camps for surfing, and, but we haven't done a camp for surfing. And with the Paddle Monster gang, we've never offered them that type of opportunity. A lot of Paddle Monster people are from flat water backgrounds, or they live in the middle of the country. They don't live on the coasts, so they didn't grow up in the surf. And so I think it's going to be, Victoria is such a great coach. I mean, she's a PhD. She's a great communicator. Rory's a great, the times we've worked with him, he's a great communicator. So I think these camps are going to be amazing. And I think people are going to have a lot of fun and learn a ton.
Yeah. As Tommy just said, best way to get paddling and surfing together. So
exactly.
Good on you for setting that up. Yeah. I think that's fantastic. Well, let's get back to you and your accomplishments. When looking at different shirts to bring out, I pulled out a Chattajack. Because when I think of races and your success, I think of this distance race. Talk about that one.
Yeah, I mean, it's an amazing race. I should tell you, like, I've never paddled that. Well, I lie. I did the Molokai solo in a one-man outrigger one year, and that was long. But I've never paddled, other than that, paddled for that distance before. And growing up as a sprint canoe athlete that races, 500 meters and 1,000 meters, that's a long way, right? We occasionally did some ultra long, like 50K paddles in training, early in the season, but never any racing like that. And racing distance was never my forte, but I did it the one year. And the first year I did it, and I did it with Mike Tavares, and we paddled together the whole way. And I ended up winning, and it was, I mean, like, I clearly like winning, so that was great. But it also hurt. Like, the drive home was like, I felt like I'd paddled hard for 5 hours. And I kind of said, well, I did it. It was cool, but I'm never doing that again. Like, that really hurt me. Like, I'm not going to do it again. And I kind of stuck to that until, that was a transition from moving from bark to starboard. And I remember when the starboard signed me up, they said, like, yeah, Bart's going to go and do Chattajack, and, you should go and join him. Like, the two of you should go and do it. And I hadn't even registered. So this was in September. So I was on the wait list, and fortunately I got in. And then it was a step up with Bart there, because Bart is such an accomplished distance racer. Mm-hmm. And, but I was able to squeak out the win again. And then I was pretty hooked. Like, he was going to go, he kept going back for a few years in a row, and I could not go back if he was going back. And so, and then the other thing is I told a story about Chattajack to a bunch of people from up here. And then we started sending a whole bunch of people down there. And, there'd be like a whole gang of us that we call ourselves, the group that paddle up here, we call ourselves the Paddle Morons. And there's a whole group of paddle morons that went, and it's become something that all of us do every year. And so, so I've done it 6 times. I won it 5 times. And the last time I did it, I had the honor of standing on the podium behind Danny Ching and Olivier from France. And it was close. I paddled with them the whole way, but you kind of know when you paddle with Danny Ching, that if it's close at the finish, that you're probably going to, you have to prepare yourself for coming second, because he's one of the best sprinters around, right? And so, if you're entering the last 200 meters of a 50K race, neck and neck with Danny. I just look at that and I think, I'll give it a go for sure, but I'm not going to kid anybody. I don't sprint as fast as Danny. So, that was, for me, it was a thrill to paddle with him, because that was the first year that, one of the guys that, when I first got into stand-up paddling, was winning the BOP every year and like winning the Carolina Cup, and like Danny's that accomplished. And for him to come to Chattajack that year and kind of take it to a new level, and for me to be, in the same, 30 seconds as him, the same 15 seconds as him at the finish, was really cool. So that was good. Sometimes coming third is good.
Yeah. Well, I love the description of that race and that finish, and good for you, because like you said, you're very competitive. You like to win, but the
you like to race the
realization
best
sometimes
people too, right? So I've always said I would rather race like a full field and come and do well, but not win, than to win against an easier field. So
not have the competition.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, gosh, I could definitely talk to you for a couple hours, but since we're only allowed an hour, I definitely want to get some more tips from you. You've already given some just in our discussion, but nobody has more, and I don't know how we limit it to just a few, but in SUP racing, for people who want to get better, how about that?
Mm-hmm.
A few tips. What would you start with?
Well, the first thing I think for people who want to get better in stand-up paddling is to paddle. It's to get out on the water and paddle. And it's to, more than that, it's to learn to get outside your board and on top of your paddle. A big part of paddling is getting body weight on the blade, right? If you can get your body weight outside the board and onto the paddle, you're more stable, you're more powerful. It makes the board sit a little higher and lighter in the water. And then obviously if you're more powerful, that makes the board travel faster as well. And so it's like, learn to trust your paddle, get outside the board, get on top of your paddle. And once you start to do that, it really changes things. Your improvement will really start to accelerate. And then I think the other thing that I would say is that, don't be afraid to fail. I used to tell a story about in canoe how I was the slowest of my group that was learning to paddle, just balance in the canoe. And it was pretty embarrassing. But when I came home and told my parents I could do it, and then they came down and watched me, and I couldn't stay in the boat. That, you know what I mean? That was, it was a hard, 6 weeks learning just to stay in it. And in stand-up paddling, I just, I talk about my first downwind experience, which was in Wrightsville Beach with Chris Hill. And, I showed up to paddle with him, and I was on my 14-foot race board. He was on a bark expedition, which was a bit more like of a surfboard. And that was the first clue that I was in trouble. And the waves were like a messy kind of 4-foot, side quartering side wave. And it took me forever to get off the beach. And then when we started downwinding, the longest I stayed on my board at any one time was 2 minutes. And I didn't catch a wave. I paddled in waves when I wasn't swimming, but I didn't catch a wave. And it was 9 miles, and I finished. When I could finally see them waiting for me on the beach, him and his son, I just paddled into the beach and dragged my board the rest of the way. I was done, and I was battered and I was bruised, and I just thought, I can't do this. And I was ready to pack up and go home. And the next day, John Bosang came and grabbed me, and we went, took me surfing, and it was 5 foot of pure glass. And I was able to, get out through that, and I was able to catch waves and surf. And I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. So I got totally rejuvenated. But, you're going to be humbled when you're learning this sport. And so just, don't take yourself so seriously. Be prepared to be humbled and go with it, because that's what gets you better. And if we don't have humbling tales that we can tell, then I don't think we've, really experience the sport as we should, right? And everyone's had them. So don't be embarrassed to fail, is the other piece of advice I would have. And learn to love the process of of failing, but then learning out of that failure comes, new lessons and growth, right? So, embrace that process. And if you do that, you will get better for sure.
Excellent top three. So do the work, as Neil just said, and getting your body weight on the paddle and the paddle on the outside, and don't be afraid to fail. And we have a whole new wave of paddlers from the pandemic who aren't necessarily racers, but we're hoping to grow our sport at the new level. And I think that's really good advice, because I've met some of them and they want to be so good right from the beginning. And you need to put in your time.
100%. And to that, I'd just like to say that we're making a real effort right now with Paddle Monster to launch like a new to change it a bit. Well, they have a new launch, around Memorial Day, which is going to be, we're going to continue to do what I love doing with people who want to race and want to train and want to, are more experienced or more ambitious, but we really want to target content to the people that are new. Because the last 2 summers, I've seen a whole bunch of people, more than I've ever seen since I started stand-up paddling, coming down and getting out on the water, because it's the perfect pandemic sport, right? And all these people love it, but they want to learn, but there's still not a lot of, fantastic resources out there. And we want to be able to provide that. So we're working really hard to create content that's going to be geared towards them, and bring them along as far as they want to go. They can go all the way to, to racing 50 or 31 miles at Chattajack, or they can just be better paddlers when they go out in their community and their little stretch of water and enjoy the experience more. But, they should have the opportunity to learn the kind of things that we've learned,
Wonderful. Love to hear that. It's all about growing the base. Well, there's the base recreationally, and then there's us at the top with the racing as one of the niche areas, but we need to grow that racing base too. It's pretty exciting though. Definitely. I agree with you. It's like our second exponential wave after somewhat of a leveling from kind of 2017.
And you need to continually replenish that racing base and the pyramid, right? And people are got to come in at they got to be beginners like we were at one point. They got to get hooked like we were, and we can all, those of us who've been involved in stand-up paddling and gotten so much out of it, we can all, I think, do our part to bring them in and bring them along. Yeah.
Well, I'm going to throw a fairly controversial question at you. You and I could talk about this for an hour, but Caracol65 asks, I'm going to read it directly. With the ISA being granted SUP by the IOC and literally doing nothing for the sport, how do you think that SUP will overcome the polarization between ICF and ISA? How's that for a question?
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that question. I didn't know what would be the best group to nurture SUP along to hopefully Olympic level someday, whether it would be the ISA or whether it would be the ICF. I know the ISA did a nice job with the Pan Ams, and everyone thought that was great. I know that the IOC loved it when they went and observed it, but I would agree that they aren't necessarily doing a lot to bring the sport along. And I thought that the last 2 world championships that the ICF has run have been really good. And I didn't go, but I talked to the athletes that did, and they thought they were pretty special experiences, both in China and in Hungary. And, the ICF's got great experience at running these types of events. And I think particularly the Hungary event, really brought some new elements into it, like held starts for the sprints and, where the introduction of racers before the race, where they go through the thing like they do on the swimming pool at the Olympics, and, little deck numbers on the boards, in the sprints, and just little things. But, that's a country to Hungary, where paddling is the type of paddling I did, sprint canoeing and kayaking, is such like a popular sport, almost like a national sport. They really did things right, and I think the ICF had a big part in that. So I think the best thing that could happen is that the two of the organizations try to outdo each other in doing the best possible job, and in the process would bring the sport along and to the point where the IOC is going to say, yeah, this should be an Olympic sport, and one of the two can facilitate it coming into the Olympics. But right now, it would seem, I don't know enough about the ISA, what they've done, but it would seem that the ICF is the group that's interested in trying to do that. And long may that continue, because, when you're trying to show up your rival, you tend to go the extra mile, to do the extra work, to make things better. And I just hope that the ICF continues to do that for this summer in Poland. And then I would hope that would inspire the ISA to do a better job. And, those of us who love stand-up paddling, that would be the best possible scenario if these two were trying to outdo each other for taking our sport to new heights, right? And if one appears not to want to do that, then I think eventually the athletes will vote, as to where to go. And they're going to want to go with the organization that does the best job for the sport and for the athletes. So we'll see how it plays out.
Yeah. And I'm, even though this isn't my interview, going to throw in, there's a third possibility. Some of us are trying to work with all organizations. Totally agree with you. I love the idea that they can both help build stand-up paddling, but that stand-up paddling itself needs a voice on its own, and it does in some countries. South Africa has a great example where all three organizations work together. So for instance, in the US, we're just starting something that's more grassroots. It's more about linking existing things, but it's that organization that's the voice of stand-up paddling, right, separate from being the add-on sport to other great organizations. Right. No doubt.
Right. No, for sure. I mean, the thing with stand-up paddling is it grew so fast on the water and in racing and whatever, much faster than it did off the water. And it's, every sport that's an Olympic sport has an international governing body, and stand-up paddling doesn't have one. So we've got these two other competing factions that are a surfing organization and a paddling organization, a canoeing organization. Basically, they call themselves the International Canoe Federation. Sort of now coming in and trying to lay claim to this popular sport, right? That doesn't have its own body. Ideally, we should, right? And if you want to be in the Olympics, you can't just be great on the track or in the pool or on the field of play or on the water. You've got to be organized off the water too. You have to have your international federation with member national federations, and we don't have that. And so we have some building we got to do, if we're going to get there.
We do in our young sport, but what an exciting ride it has been since 2010. Absolutely. And so cool to hear your whole story. I'd love to end with just, you've been so many places, you paddled so many places. Are there any type of paddling you still want to do? Any places you haven't been that you'd be interested to go to, or any specific races for you?
As far as racing is concerned, I mean, I'm getting to a point where, it's not so much about the racing. I just love getting better. So I paddle every day I possibly can. And I try to challenge myself to get better, whether it's through the physical training, the technique, or whether it's paddling in more challenging conditions. We'll see about the racing, but no, I would like to paddle in different locations. And I don't know that I need to try a different type of paddling. I guess I'd like to learn how to foil, because everyone who is foiling seems to be having so much fun, but I still think there's lots to learn just in paddling first. And but I'd like to be able to paddle in some of the more exotic locations in the world, with warm water and sunny skies and lush green, like jungles and stuff. Like, I've been to Hawaii and it's been amazing. I'd love to go to Tahiti and places like that, and so, that's hopefully in the future. But I also am very satisfied with where I live and the beautiful place that I have to paddle every day. So, you know, as long as I can do that, even in the winter, I'm a pretty happy guy.
You seem like a very happy guy. Well, can't thank you enough for this interview and also just what you have done for all of us, whether you're their coach or not. You know, we've seen your videos and your technique help has been just fantastic and really a huge resource. Thrilled to hear that Paddle Monster is going to continue to grow and is going to expand and going to focus somewhat on getting those new people in, which I think is super important. Remind us, you have another one in like 2 or 3 hours. If people go on Paddle Monster, they can find it.
I do. So we have I'm doing like a Zoom seminar on, what did I call it? I called it,
It was something good. Sorry, I looked at it too.
Connection, the water column, and gear.
Ooh, yeah.
Okay, so it's kind of about what happens underneath the water that we can't see when we're paddling, that allow us to, you know, secure the paddle and pull ourselves by the paddle, and how we can use that to kind of determine the gear that we want to paddle in, almost analogous to the way we have gears in a bicycle that we can ride in, right? And so that starts at 7. It's for basic members of Paddle Monster. So anyone who's not a member of Paddle Monster, you can join for the month for $10, and then get access to all the other resources that we have, that you don't.
That's a really good one. Yeah.
To see. And then Victoria's going to do a
crossings next week, right?
A seminar next week on preparation for doing crossings in the ocean. And then I'm going to do a part 2 of this one the following week or the week after that. So, you know, these aren't one-off things. They're things we're trying to do all the time, to give our members, you know, not just access to all of the stuff that we've done in the past and it's on file that they can dig up, but also constantly providing them with new material that's of value. So.
And you are doing that. So thank you very much for all that you do, Larry.
Yeah.
Bless you for taking care of your mom and all. Does that mean we won't see you at this Carolina Cup, or?
We'll see. We'll see. So my sister's in the process of moving home, and if she's home by that point, then yeah, I'd like to come. But if not, it might be a no-go for me.
Well, it'd be great. It's been a very challenging and strange 2 years, and I know Canada has been very careful. We saw a few Canadians at the last one, but I know more of the people on this call from Canada will be able to go to Carolina Cup.
Yeah. I think I think despite the fact that we're in the midst of another quasi lockdown here again, I think, you know, and the Raptors have no fans in the stands. I think we're nearing the end of it. Like, we've got a high compliance rate with vaccines up here, and we've got, I think the Omicron numbers have peaked and they're starting to trend down again. So, that's what they're saying. You know, so we're all hopefully, you know, this is the end. We were so close to what we thought was the end, and you know, this was a little bit of a harsh, you know, it was just hard for people, everyone it was discouraging right before Christmas, but I think brighter times are ahead. So we'll hope for the best.
We'll leave on that positive note. And thanks again, and good luck with your next one. I'll let you go.
Thank you. It was really enjoyable. Thank you.
Great to talk with you, Larry. Take care.
Okay, Kirsten.
And everyone, remember, this immediately goes to IGTV, and then we'll have it out on YouTube within a day or 2.
Awesome. Excellent.
Tell your friends who didn't get to watch, but thank you everyone who got to.
Thanks so much.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.